How much damage has the Trump administration done to the world of science?
This was truly an existential threat.
Have we already crossed the threshold from just political interference into outright censorship of science in the United States of America in 2025?
In the end, if we don't have politicians who will do what's right for us and instead are rubber stamps for these bad actors, we're going to lose this battle.
At one point you say you got an envelope in the mail that contained white powder.
That's what the bad actors want. They want you to give up.
It's a war on expertise across the board.
Unless we counteract this rising anti-vaccine, anti-science aggression, it'll all unravel.
Last month, the US witnessed a deranged and deeply concerning press conference that included Donald J. Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Dr. Oz that focused on dangerous misinformation which blurred the lines between politics and public health recklessness. If it wasn't bad enough that Trump repeated debunked claims about a non-existent link between autism and vaccines, he also advised pregnant women not to take Tylenol, despite the fact that untreated high fevers can actually increase the risk of miscarriage, premature births, and other complications. He also encouraged parents to delay the hepatitis B vaccine until at least the age of 12, even though the disease can be transmitted from mother to child at birth. To make matters worse, Trump admitted his so-called medical advice wasn't based on science or recommendations from medical experts. They were, in his own words, based on what I feel. The very next day, he went to the UN and called climate change a con job. Donald Trump lacks any scientific or medical expertise, but our guests today don't. I'm joined by scientist Dr. Michael E. Mann, a Presidential Distinguished Professor of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania. And here in the studio, we have Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine and Professor of Pediatrics and Molecular Virology and Microbiology at Baylor College of Medicine. Between the two of them, Mann and Hotez have published nearly 1,000 scientific papers. Their new book is called Science Under Siege: How to Fight the 5 Most Powerful Forces That Threaten Our World. It's out and available now. Michael and Peter, join me now. Mike, Peter, thanks for joining me on Mehdi Unfiltered. Big book out. Big time for a book like this. Before we get into the book, both of you just give me your takes. I'll start with you, Peter, here in the studio. How much damage has the Trump administration done to the world of science in the 9 months it's been in office?
Well, Mehdi, we wrote a lot of the book before 2025, and we knew we were going to be in for a roller coaster ride. I think Michael and I have been talking. I think in some aspects, it's even worse than they imagined in terms of the dismantling of our pandemic preparedness and vaccine infrastructure. And of course, Michael can talk about what's happening on the climate change front.
Just generally, Mike, how bad has it been?
Yeah, thanks, Mehdi. It's good to be with you. And just to carry Peter's analogy forward, it's sort of like the car at the end of the roller coaster has broken free from the rest of the roller coaster and it's gone down a cliff. That's sort of how it feels right now. We had no idea that things could get as bad as quickly as they have gotten, whether it is the anti-science policies on COVID-19, on vaccination, which Peter can speak to, with RFK Jr. now, the head of the Secretary of Health and Human Services, or the deconstruction, essentially, of all of the environmental progress, including climate progress, of the past several decades over the course of just a few months. We are seeing the disintegration of all of the environmental progress that has been made through Republican and Democratic administrations in the past.
Why did you choose, Peter, to write this book now? I mean, you said you wrote it before 2025, before Donald Trump is in office. Even before he comes to office, you both clearly wanted to sound the alarm on the dangers of anti-science. What made you want to do that?
Well, we realized that this was truly an existential threat. When Michael and I were comparing notes, and it's pretty clear that the two major threats to humanity right now are pandemic threats and climate change. And actually, the two are related. One of the reasons we're seeing the rise in viruses transmitted from bats like Ebola and coronavirus is because of shifting bat patterns and climate change. One of the reasons we're seeing the rise in mosquito-borne illnesses, especially in Southern Europe and Texas and the Gulf Coast, like dengue and others. But it's clear now that there's a third leg to that tripod, and that third leg is this whole anti-science disinformation ecosystem that's now blocking our ability to respond to it. And that becomes every bit as important as the two other ones.
And Mike, in the book, you break down the 5 principal forces of anti-science. You refer to them as the 5 Ps, the plutocrats, the petrostates, the professionals, the propagandists, and the press. Just briefly explain for those who haven't yet read the book, what role those Ps play in promoting anti-science.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a sucker for alliteration. And, that's what we try to do here in enumerating what we do see as the 5 great threats to, a sustainable existence on this planet. The plutocrats, of course, who are funding a lot of the disinformation infrastructure, right-wing front groups, organizations that attack science, attack scientists. The petrostates, bad state actors like Russia and Saudi Arabia, we would have said in the past that have funded sort of climate change denialism. But now we have to include the United States as a petrostate because its policies are currently dictated by the fossil fuel industry, for whom Donald Trump and congressional Republicans are essentially now a rubber stamp. And then there are the propagandists and the pros. Those are the folks out there who are spreading the misinformation, the disinformation, often on social media that has been weaponized by plutocrats like Elon Musk to promote that misinformation and disinformation. And then the press. And of course, we're talking about the right-wing press, the conservative press, Fox News, the Wall Street Journal editorial page, the sort of Murdoch media empire and other conservative media outlets. But these days, every bit as problematic are many of the legacy media outlets, which we take to task, like the Washington Post and the New York Times, for what we call performative neutrality, this idea that the position anti-science should be on the same footing as science as it's presented to the public.
No, well said. Performative neutrality is a good phrase, very accurate, sadly. Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share, and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. Peter, we've got to talk about the anti-vax elephant in the room. RFK Jr. is the Health and Human Services Secretary of the United States government. Did you ever imagine that someone would say that statement out loud to you?
Well, not only that he became Health and Human Services Secretary, which is an absolute tragedy for the country, but the fact that there's been none of the usual checks and balances to kind of rein him in, either coming from the White House or from the Republican senators and House members.
They voted to confirm him.
Well, even after
Bill Cassidy, medical doctor.
But even after confirming him, there should be some kind of reins put on. I mean, look what he's done. I mean, he's reopened this phony baloney vaccine and autism agenda, which is how I got involved in it, because I'd spoken to RFK Jr. for a full year many years ago, asked by the NIH, because I have not only a vaccine scientist, but I have a daughter with autism and intellectual disabilities. And I actually wound up writing a book on that year of discussions with him called Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism. So he's reopened that. He's talked about creating autism registries, which have this very dark...
You said you spoke to him for a year on and off.
Mm-hmm.
What's driving him? You could look at someone like Donald Trump and say, ignoramus, not the sharpest tool in the box. RFK Jr. is a smart man who had a good education, did some good things at one point in his career in different fields. What is driving him on this front to behave in this way?
Well, I can give you a sort of an example in my discussions with him. I went through all the genetics of autism, and that accounts for most of what causes autism. These are genes operating in early fetal brain development. But I actually pointed out, I'd say, Bobby, there are actually environmental exposures that interact with autism genes that we know about. An example is Decode or valproic acid. So if you're pregnant and not aware of it, and on Decode, that interacts with autism genes and increases the likelihood your child will be born with an autism phenotype. And I named 4 or 5 other ones just like that. And he had no interest, zero interest. And I was shocked. And I would say, Bobby, you're an environmental attorney. This is your moment.
So then what is driving him is just being a conspiracy theorist.
Or suing vaccine companies. He seems very focused on what he can win in terms of legal cases. He very prone to conspiracy thinking and quickly goes down that rabbit hole. So it was an exercise in frustration, probably for both of us.
And Mike, Peter's called MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again agenda that Donald Trump and RFK have pushed. You've called it, Peter, an economic stimulus plan for the wellness influencers. And I feel like there's an irony here, Mike, in that when it comes to RFK and MAHA, they're obsessed with big pharma. If you say anything about, oh, you're a stooge, you're a shill for big pharma, we're trying to get money out of health, we're trying to make it all. And yet when it comes to your part of science, climate science, it's the exact reverse. It's big oil, big fossil fuels are dictating policy. Donald Trump had a meeting with them at Mar-a-Lago before he was elected to say, give me money and I'll get rid of the regulations.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And, when you ask what is driving RFK Jr., I have a shorter answer. We're all talking about him, aren't we? He has achieved a level of prominence that he couldn't possibly have otherwise achieved. Yes. And it's very clear that he is a team player right now because it isn't just the anti-vax rhetoric. We know, for some time he's been committed to that movement, which is an anti-science movement. But he is also now promoting fossil fuel industry talking points. Just recently, he promoted this myth that wind turbines are killing whales. This is the latest scare tactic to try to convince the public, including environmentalists, that we shouldn't be moving away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy. And he's part of that assault. He's part of the assault on clean energy. Again, I'll just make one point here. The irony that he is talking about windmills killing whales, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever, when he actually once, and I'm not making this up, I'm not, cut the head off of a whale. It was in the news.
Dragged it in his car, if I remember. It's astonishing that the one good thing he did in his career, which was fighting for the environment, you're saying, to be part of the Trump administration, he's even turned his back on that. And you see that with Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, people who came from the Democratic Party to join MAGA, and now they're willing to sell out even the few self-proclaimed principles they had.
Yeah, it seems so. It seems that if you're going to be a member of that inner group, if you're going to be a member of that tribe, you have to subscribe to all of their tenets. And one of the chief tenet, and the fossil fuel industry has made sure of that, and those petrostates have made sure of that, is to deny the threat of climate change and to promote fossil fuels.
Peter, we're seeing the Trump administration canceling key climate reports. We're seeing them telling scientists not to publish certain studies, threatening medical journals. Have we already crossed the threshold from just political interference into outright censorship of science in the United States of America in 2025?
I think you can make the case for it, and I think you might ask, well, why are they doing that? And a lot of it is, if you look at the three threads of the anti-vaccine movement, first, phony associations with autism. Second, libertarian health freedom concepts around 10 years ago. The third piece now is this health and wellness influencer industry, and which is all about whatever they can buy in bulk, jack up the price, and then sell with $1,500 telehealth visits. Have you ever wondered why they're all anti-parasitic drugs, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole? It's because you can buy a bucket of it cheap, repackage it, and sell it with a $1,500 telehealth visit. And what's interesting is, back years ago when I was speaking with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the wellness influencer stuff was not prominent. Now, when you listen to his rhetoric, he's changed his rhetoric accordingly. So you can either get the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, or you can get this cocktail of supplements, budesonide, vitamin A, cod liver oil, clarithromycin. It's all nonsense, but it's very much supporting the health and wellness and influencer movement. And part of that requires them to attack mainstream science and scientists. That's why they portray, people like myself or Michael as cartoon villains or public enemies. It's why they're going after the biomedical journals, trying to dismantle our whole biomedical scientific infrastructure.
It's a war on expertise across the board. Trust them, don't trust anyone else. Michael, you and I, before you even came on my old shows at MS, we followed each other on social media. Social media, as you know, has become a driving force of misinformation, anti-science rhetoric, climate change denialism, anti-vaccine propaganda. You look at Twitter, which, as you write in the book, was once a public sphere for the dissemination of scientific knowledge until Elon Musk bought it and transformed it into what you call, quote, an anti-science cesspool of misinformation and disinformation. How do scientists... being kind. Sorry?
We were being kind.
Yes, you are being kind. How do scientists combat this information war online. In general, with the greatest respect to you both, scientists are not known for being great at, doing information in a brief, concise way, being TV friendly, media friendly. On top of that, now you have social media putting all these lies on steroids. How do you fight back against that, Mike?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that is the ultimate battle here, right? Because if we don't win this battle over ideologically driven disinformation, there's no way, as Peter said earlier, there's no way for us to tackle the defining challenges of our time, the climate crisis, the threat of ever more deadly pandemics. And so we have to be in that battle. And in the book, we basically make the point that people have to be committed personally to making those changes. Obviously, voting for politicians who will support common sense regulation of these social media companies, because right now their incentive is to allow the unfettered sort of propagation of falsehoods, misinformation, disinformation, and they actually have PACs that they have set up. Mark Zuckerberg supports a PAC that actively opposes any legislation to rein in these social media companies. And in the end, if we don't have politicians who will do what's right for us and instead are rubber stamps for these bad actors, we're going to lose this battle.
One of the most concerning aspects of the book, Peter, were the threats you've both faced in your line of work that you talk about. And you and I have talked about the threats you've faced in the past, from death threats to being confronted at lectures to people stalking around your homes, demands for your firings. What has that been like for the last few years, especially since the pandemic?
Well, it's gotten really dark, and it puts you in a very scary place. Look, during the day, I'm talking to people like you or to Mike, and I'm in lab meetings and giving lectures to the students. I'm good. I'm in the mix. At night, though, it does start to really wear on you, and you might ask, well, why bother? And the reason I bother and the reason I put myself and unfortunately sometimes my family at risk is because how important it is. Ever since I can remember, I wanted to be a pediatrician scientist making low-cost vaccines for the world. And we've done that. 100 million doses of our low-cost COVID vaccine reached India and Indonesia. We've making parasitic disease
vaccines. And you made
vaccines.
millions off of that, didn't you?
I think it was $2,300. So nothing. And that's what I wanted to do. But now I realize that it's important but not sufficient. That unless we counteract this rising anti-vaccine, anti-science aggression, it'll all unravel, and that's the reason.
Mike, at one point you say you got an envelope in the mail that contained white powder, an action you wrote that was meant to stoke fear. Yeah. What do you say to other science? You guys have big platforms. You are well known. You've published this book. You appear in the media. You've advised governments. What do you say to younger, up-and-coming scientists who maybe don't have Ivy League perches, who don't have public profiles, who look at this stuff and say, I don't want to get those kind of death threats. I'm just going to self-censor. What do you say to them?
Yeah, well, Mehdi, as you said earlier, most scientists aren't really well equipped to enter into this battle, to be involved in the communication wars. We need to provide resources for those scientists who have an interest and proclivity to do that. We need to be raising a generation of scientists who are willing to be out there, who are willing to be brave, because frankly, it takes some bravery. Peter and I are constantly attacked. There are efforts to have us fired from our positions. There are death threats to our family as well as us as individuals. You name it, they've tried it on us, but we continue to do this because we know the stakes are too great. They're literally, what sort of world do we want to leave behind? A livable world, a livable planet, a flourishing human civilization for our children and grandchildren. And so the stakes are too great. You need to be brave. And if you have the interest and the proclivity, then be out there communicating the science and its implications to the public. There's strength in numbers. The more of us who are doing that, who are out there, the safer we all are. And so Peter and I have stuck our necks up because it's just important to us. We feel the stakes are too great. But hopefully we and other scientists who are doing that are also creating space for younger scientists who have grown up, frankly, in an environment where it's natural to communicate. They've grown up in the world of social media. And so they're well equipped to do this with the right tools. And we need to help them, and we need to provide resources.
Mike, let me ask you this. You mentioned the stakes are high. You mentioned a livable planet. What is the current state of the existential threat that climate change is to the planet right now. We are 9 months into Donald Trump. We had 4 years of Joe Biden, which weren't great. I think you and I can agree on the issue of climate change. How bad is the threat right now?
Yeah, and we shouldn't understate the Inflation Reduction Act was monumental legislation. It did have the potential, if not blocked by congressional Republicans, which they're now doing, to substantially lower carbon emissions here in the U.S. And so we were sort of on the right path, maybe not making as much progress as we'd like. One of the sort of the messages that I often fall back on, because there's so much doom and despair and defeatism right now, and that's what they want. That's what the bad actors want. They want you to give up. They want you to give in to despair and to give up hope and to give up battling for a better world. It's important for us to understand that what the science says is that not only is there urgency, and clearly there is that urgency, we see the devastating consequences of the climate crisis, of these pandemics like COVID-19. It's clear that there's urgency in acting, but there's also agency. It's not too late to act. The obstacles, let me just say, aren't the science. They're not the physical obstacles. They're not technological obstacles. We have the technology to decarbonize our world. The obstacles are political, and each of us can make a difference by participating in the political process and making sure everybody else we know does as well.
Well said. Let's end on a moment of optimism and hope. Michael Mann, Peter Hotez, thank you both for joining me on the show. The book is called Science Under Siege, How to Fight the 5 Most Powerful Forces That Threaten Our World. It is out now.
Thanks, Mehdi.
Thank you, Mehdi.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to zeteo.com. Your support matters.